go back to Easter Day. Jesus dies because he was killed on the cross, and then there's the resurrection, and that's different from him coming back to life again, which would be quite amazing in itself. But he appears to some of his disciples, and they see him in a different kind of body that is kind of like a human body, but kind of like an enhanced human body, or an upgraded version of the human body that can do things like, it's not quite limited to space and time like the ways that our bodies are. So that it's really similar to what we're used to, but different, because he could walk through walls and that kind of thing. And the significance of this, it wasn't that Christians were happy because Jesus was back again and he wasn't dead. It was what they saw in Jesus' sort of resurrection body, you might call it, was a glimpse of this. When heaven and earth have come completely together again, that's when the earth will be kind of as we know it, but kind of different, because it will be how God intends it to be, and part of that will be that there's no death and there's no pain and there's no suffering. And part of that is that we'll have bodies that are similar to the ones we've got now, but different. And that this is the kind of body that people saw Jesus having after his resurrection. And so the big deal about this was that Jesus was the first person to experience the kind of life that we're going to have in this heaven and earth joined together. And that gave Christians even more, well, they wouldn't have been called Christians at the time, but that gave Jesus' early followers even more belief that this project that Jesus said was underway is actually underway, and even more hope that God promises that anything he begins, he's not going to leave unfinished. And so Christians' hope was strengthened, that this project was indeed underway and would reach its completion, and that Jesus was the first person for this to happen to, but it would happen to all of us eventually. So I'm turning this round. This here is my picture of the church, and I would say the church is, you could describe it in lots of different ways, but the people that who acknowledge that Jesus is part of God and who have become part of Jesus somehow, and who have joined him in this task of helping bring heaven to earth. And a lot of this, a lot of people who aren't necessarily religious do a lot of good work in the world, which might be seen to be part of this project. But also, God's trying to God is reclaiming rule of both the world as a whole and also individual lives. And the more that God can have control of our individual lives, the more useful we can be in helping this project move forwards. Because the more loving we'll be, as an example, if God can change us on the inside, that then helps God change the world. I hope that makes sense. And so Christians are called, a lot of the stuff in the letters in the Bible, it's about, in a way we're kind of already living in heaven, or in a way we've chosen already, kind of ahead of time, to live under God's rule. At some point in the future, God's rule will completely govern the earth, and everything will be perfect again. And Christians are the ones who've chosen, who've kind of taken up Jesus on his invitation and his offer, and have chosen to start living under God's rule, and are continually being changed by God every day, to let God have more and more control or influence in their life. It's kind of a lifelong process of being changed on the inside. And they've chosen to help Jesus in this task of continuing what Jesus started. Where's Jesus at the moment in this? The Bible says that Jesus basically is in heaven praying 24/7 for Project Renovation, and will keep praying it until it's completed. And he's also helping his Christians throughout the world, helping people throughout the world in bringing this kingdom about. And he's forgiving sins and helping people, individuals, no longer be cut off from God, but helping God's rule come into individual lives as well. And so the Bible encourages Christians to remember that they are living in the world in a physical sense. That really this should kind of be transparent somehow. They are living in the world, and the world's not a bad thing. I mean, these whole clips are all about God's not abandoned the world, and the world isn't. It's not like heaven is good and earth is bad or anything. So they're called to live in the world, but under God's rules. So they will do things differently from people around them, and they will maybe stick out a bit or have different values. And they're also called to live in the world, kind of knowing that this is eventually what's going to happen, knowing that one day heaven and earth will be joined, and kind of just living in that way as if that's already happened. It's a bit like you're watching a football match, and I don't know, for some reason maybe that one team is so far ahead in their goals than the other that you just know before the whistle blows what the outcome's going to be. The Bible promises the Bible promises both that Project Renovation will continue until it reaches completion, and it promises that God will win through in the end, that God will reclaim the whole earth back under his rule again, and that even death itself, which is another one of these negative influences that wasn't the original intention, will no longer be there. And in my last clip I'll talk about this final joining together of heaven and earth.